Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, owner Mark Davis pulls the plug on Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, waking up Raider Nation from one of their scariest and biggest nightmares on Halloween. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, November 1st, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. Of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. We definitely appreciate you in a major way, and we definitely appreciate my man Ari in a major way. Does a great job each and every day making sure we're up on YouTube, so we appreciate that. You can hit him up on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. We got a lot of feedback to get to coming up in segment number 3 of today's show, following the news that broke late Tuesday night if you're on the West Coast, still on Halloween, the news of Raiders head coach Josh McDaniels and GM Dave Ziegler both being relieved of their duties by owner Mark Davis. So a lot of that feedback will come up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about what's next. What do the Raiders do now that there's at least 9 games left in the regular season? There's a lot of questions along the roster, questions at the quarterback position, who's going to be the head coach, who's going to be the GM. Lots of questions that need to be answered. And, of course, there's a lot of the season still left to go. So we'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, want to hit you with the news and the notes. And, of course, the biggest news and notes of the day is what I said came down late Tuesday night on the West Coast, Halloween night. And that's the fact that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler both out as the head coach and the GM of the Silver and Black. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor, which is Gametime. Right now, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And Raider Nation, I'll tell you right now, this news hit me as a surprise. It hit me as a shock. I know it's something that a lot of Raider Nation really wanted to happen, and it has wanted to happen for quite a while. I don't know if it's both Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, but we all know they came in as a duo. And I was on the radio. I was actually doing my radio show on ESPN Game Night. I was doing that on Tuesday night on Halloween, again on the West Coast, and around 10 o'clock, all of a sudden I saw a tweet from the Raiders, and I thought, man, it's kind of weird that they're tweeting at 10 o'clock at night. And then I saw the tweet from Adam Schefter that head coach Josh McDaniels and GM Dave Ziegler had been relieved of their duties. And I thought, wait a minute, hold on. Am I getting duped? Because, you know, the whole blue check mark thing on Twitter is all kind of really weird stuff. And I didn't want to tweet this out and be like, whoa, what happened? Whoa, what's going on? Something I didn't see coming, and then find out it's wrong. So I had to verify it a couple times and then realize, oh, wait, this is wrong. So we're about to go into conversation about the World Series. We're about to go into conversation about the college football playoff show. No, the whole last hour of my show on ESPN, and it's funny, I actually had an extra hour because of the World Series. The whole last hour of the radio show was all about the Raiders, all about Josh McDaniels, all about Dave Ziegler and Mark Davis deciding to pull the plug. So the statement that was released by the Raiders on late Tuesday night said, the Las Vegas Raiders have relieved Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler of their duties as head coach and general manager. After much thought about what the Raiders need to move forward, I have decided to part ways with Josh and Dave. I want to thank them both for their hard work and wish them and their families nothing but the best. That's from Las Vegas Raiders owner Mark Davis. So that was a statement, short but sweet, from Mark Davis. Then Adam Schefter tweeted, Raiders owner Mark Davis began informing select members of his organization later in day Tuesday. He was firing Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, and now he has become the first NFL owner this season to fire their head coach and their GM. Also, this is a little nugget that I wasn't too aware of, and I know that it's been a conversation piece for a lot of Raider Nation. The Raiders gave Josh McDaniels a 6-year contract in January 2022. He has over 4 full years left on the deal that the Raiders are obligated to pay. So that's a lot of money that Mark Davis has to dish out. He's obviously making a lot of money with the organization here in Las Vegas, but still that's a tough pill to swallow for the owner who thought that he found his guy in Josh McDaniels, thought he found his guy in GM Dave Ziegler, and it just didn't happen like that. So again, super shocked that it happened at this point. I mean, we have been talking about it here for a couple weeks. I had said that, I thought that they had a 3-year plan, and that was something that had been rolled out. And that was the belief, even going back to the owners meetings, in Phoenix, earlier in the year, that it sounded like, okay, there's going to be at least 3 years. But as I've noted on the show multiple times, embarrassing losses can change ideas and change mindsets of people real quick, fast, in a hurry, right? That loss to Chicago, a couple Sundays ago, that was really bad. That was something that should not have happened. The way they lost to Detroit on Monday Night Football, that shouldn't have happened, right? Not that way. To have one guy in Jahmyr Gibbs have more yards from scrimmage than the Raiders had as a team offensively is not good. The way that you see Devontae Adams super frustrated, the way you see Josh Jacobs super frustrated, the way you see the whole team frustrated with the fact that they're not winning, they're not competing, and basically they've been everybody's get-right game. You can see where the frustration comes in. You can see why, Mark Davis finally made the decision to pull the plug. I'll also say this, and I know that this is probably something that doesn't weigh heavily into the decision to move on. But him winning back-to-back championships with the WNBA with the Aces and Becky Hammond as the head coach, I'm sure he probably thought, like, wait a minute, how come they could figure it out? How come the Golden Knights are here in Vegas can figure it out? How come we can't figure it out? So, that's something that I think probably played a little bit of a factor, that all this success is going on around the Raiders here in town, and the Raiders aren't doing it. Not to mention all the opposing fans that are taking over the stadium each and every game. I'm sure that that's not something that he's too happy about. And, of course, on the field, the lack of success, the lack of offensive genius, as many people have called in. Like, I understand all the reasons why. I just was surprised that it happened, especially with 9 weeks left in the regular season. I didn't think that Josh McDaniels would be the first head coach to get fired. Honestly, didn't think he was going to get fired, if at all, until the offseason. But, Mark Davis pulls the trigger. He decides to make the move. Both Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels both out. So now literally the search begins right now, right? I mean, of course, they can't hire anybody anytime soon, right? There's going to be interims, and we'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2 at both the GM and the head coaching position. We'll do that again, like I said, in segment number 2. But, they'll have a head start. They can start, deciding on what they're looking for, who they're looking for, if there's any kind of ideas, if they're going to put a committee together, whatever the case may be, but they can start that process immediately. So there's going to be a lot of changes going on. There's going to be roster changes. There's going to be personnel changes. There could be starting quarterback changes. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could be changing moving forward, but that's, for another day. And obviously we've got a long time to go still in this 2023 season with 9 games still guaranteed. But the news that a lot of Raider Nation was waiting for, as I mentioned at the top, it's pretty fitting that it was on Halloween that Mark Davis decided to pull the trigger, because why wouldn't he, right? It's so Raiders to be something on Halloween, right? I mean, it almost felt right, even though I never root for guys to get fired. Like, that's just not in my DNA. I'm not that guy. I know how difficult it is to get a job, so I'm never going to root for someone to fail at their job. Now, Josh McDaniels didn't do the job that he was, tasked to do. Dave Ziegler didn't do the job Mark Davis wanted him to do. So not like I'm mad that they made the move. Just I never root for people to get fired. I mean, it's a tough business, right? The minute you get hired is the minute that you're basically signing up to get fired at some point. It's the same thing with radio, right? The minute I sign the paperwork to get my job on the radio is the first day that is closer to my firing. That's just how the business is. It's not for long, right? And that's the NFL. It's not for long. Of course, we're in 2 different entities, but Josh McDaniels didn't do enough to prove that he still needed to remain as the Raiders head coach, and Mark Davis decided it was time to pull the trigger. So what's next? What do the Raiders do? Who are they turning to? Who's going to be the interim head coach? Who's going to be the interim GM? What's next for the Silver and Black? We'll talk about it in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast after I tell you about our partners at eBay Motors, the fact that they've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft, scouting the waiver wire, every single week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's go ahead and check out who Vinny picked out for us this week, eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Earlier, we looked at it and we're like, wait a minute, hold on, this is from week 8. So hopefully Vinny's hitting us with some new stuff, and he is. He was looking at Falcons wide receiver Drake London, Browns running back Kareem Hunt, Panthers running back Chuba Hubbard, and Bills rookie tight end Dalton Kincaid. Let's talk about Dalton Kincaid. He said he stepped into a big role with Dawson Knox getting hurt. He's gotten hot with Josh Allen the past 2 weeks, scoring for the first time in his career in Week 8 against the Buccaneers. Kincaid gets a smash spot in a shootout with the Bengals on Sunday night. Cincinnati's been better in coverage outside and versus wideouts than versus tight ends. Kincaid will once again come through for managers looking for midseason pick-me-up at that position. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your car stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your car needs, eBay Motors has it. And with Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber. You're not burning cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to talk about what's next. Now that Josh McDaniels is out, now that Dave Ziegler is out, what is next for the Silver and Black? Of course, there's got to be some interims named, the GM and the head coach. And so the Raiders have made it official with both the GM and the head coach. They've named Champ Kelly, who was the assistant GM, who the Raiders actually interviewed ahead of hiring Dave Ziegler as the GM. They've hired him as the interim interim GM as of right now. The statement released from the Raiders late on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. The Raiders have named Champ Kelly as the interim general manager. Kelly is in his second season as assistant general manager with the Raiders. Prior to joining the Raiders, Kelly spent 7 seasons in personnel and scouting with the Chicago Bears and 8 seasons with the Broncos. In his NFL career, his teams have won 5 division titles, 1 conference championship, appeared in Super Bowl, and to date, players have earned a combined 58 Pro Bowl nominations and 6 Hall of Fame enshrinements. The Raiders are committed to undergo a comprehensive search for a general manager once the season is complete. So the rest of the season, Champ Kelly is the interim general manager for the Silver and Black. So obviously he'll report directly to Mark Davis, and they'll have to go from there. And I don't know what it's going to take for him to earn that job. I don't know if there's a chance that he does, if he can earn that job, or if he's just keeping that seat warm until the end of the season. But we'll see. Champ Kelly is a guy that I know very well, and I've heard from a lot of different people, including Harry Douglas, who's part of ESPN and was with Champ Kelly there in Atlanta. Harry Douglas was a longtime wide receiver in the NFL. Says Champ Kelly is really well respected across the NFL as a sharp mind. I've had Champ Kelly on this show multiple times. I've had him on my radio show multiple times, and he sounds the part. But I also thought that Dave Ziegler sounded the part. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this is, a great move and Champ Kelly is the best guy for the job. But just know that before Dave Ziegler was named the GM, Champ Kelly was interviewed for that GM position and ultimately decided to be with the Raiders as the assistant GM as opposed to going somewhere else. I always felt like Champ Kelly would earn his own team at some point. I felt like he wasn't going to be long with the Raiders organization. Some team was going to hire him away to be their GM. He's got 9 games. He's got a lot of season to go, and there's a lot of different things that he could possibly do to show and earn that spot. Obviously, that's up to Mark Davis. You saw what they said right there on that statement. The Raiders are committed to undergo a comprehensive search for a general manager once the season is complete. So I'm sure at the very end of the day, he'll at least get an interview. And that's all you need, right? You need an opportunity to get your foot in the door and see what can happen. The Raiders know him very well. They know what he's capable of, and they know how much he's regarded around the NFL. So he has a good shot as anyone else. But, again, it's going to be a long time before all these decisions are finalized. But Champ Kelly is, at least right now, the interim general manager throughout the rest of the season. As far as the head coach goes, I know it was rumored a lot. There was a lot of tweets rolling out, but depending on what time you go to bed, and again, it's funny, only because I had an extra hour on the radio on ESPN because of the World Series, is everything kind of lined up at the same time. But the Raiders announced that linebacker coach Antonio Pierce is going to be the interim head coach. They said Pierce is in his second season as linebackers coach with the Raiders, has 7 years of coaching experience and 9 years of playing in the league. Before joining the Raiders, Pierce spent 5 seasons at Arizona State serving as a linebackers coach before adding the title of associate head coach and defensive coordinators. The Las Vegas Raiders are committed to undergo a comprehensive search for a head coach once the season is complete. So there you go. Interim head coach Antonio Pierce, interim GM Champ Kelly. And who knows if Antonio Pierce is going to be that guy, right? I mean, the last time the Raiders had an interim, it was Rich Bisaccia, and he ended up getting the Raiders into the playoffs, and a lot of folks believe that he should have been the head coach moving forward, and maybe he should have. Mark Davis ultimately chose to go a different direction. Rich Bisaccia is now in Green Bay as the special teams coach, special teams coordinator, and that's what it is. He hasn't got a head coaching job anywhere else. Who knows if he'd be a part of the mix again as far as part of the conversation. Maybe they would think about bringing him back. I don't know. I have no idea. Obviously, these are questions that we'll ask. We'll ask to a lot of different people, folks that have better ideas of what's going on inside the building than I do. I know from everything that I understood from staying up very late on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, trying to decipher and break down everything that was going down, not to mention do this show as well, that there weren't a whole lot of people that were privy to this information that this was going to happen the way that it did. Not too many people knew that. Apparently, this information really caught a lot of people inside that building off guard. So apparently a lot of people on Twitter found out about the firings around the same time as a lot of people inside the building. So it's not like it was something that you saw the writing on the wall. I know I didn't see it coming. I know that Raider Nation wanted to see it coming, and a lot of people were trying to talk it into fruition, put it into the air, and it happened, right? It ultimately happened where Dave Ziegler's out, Josh McDaniels is out, and now you got the interims in and Champ Kelly and Antonio Pierce. So Adam Schefter tweeted out, "It's a new day in Vegas. Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce, Raiders general manager Champ Kelly. Pierce will make his NFL head coach debut on Sunday versus former team, the New York Giants." So that's pretty interesting. And then this nugget from Vinny Bonsignore, and this is something I talked about on the podcast on Tuesday, talked about it on my radio show on Tuesday. He said, per a source with knowledge, the Raiders are leaning towards Aiden O'Connell as their starting quarterback this week against the Giants. And that's what I mean when I say there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of roster changes that are going to happen. I really feel like it's going to be, obviously a lean year the rest of the way. You might not see Jimmy G anymore. You might not see Jimmy G ever again as far as the silver and black go. I know he has a contract. I know he's got a lot of money left on that contract, and if the Raiders were to release him and move on from him, it'd be a big dead hit. But if they're willing to take that hit and say, you know what, this ain't it, this little, New England West isn't working out, and these, players and coaches that are here aren't going to do it, and we need to do a full rebuild, they've got to commit to doing it. They can't, halfway do it. If they're going to do it, they've just got to do it all the way, and they've just got to cut their losses, no matter how much dead money that might be. They'll suffer for a year. Raider Nation's been suffering for years, but you've got to go ahead and get the right guys in place, whoever your head coach is going to be, whoever your GM is going to be, and decide what you're going to move forward with as far as players, personnel, who that's going to be, and what it's going to look like, what the image of your team you want it to be. I mean, it's really an opportunity for Mark Davis and this organization to start from ground zero and just make the thing all new again, right? I mean, just again, because it's just that the parts aren't matching, the production's not matching what the parts look like, right? There's a lot of really good, talented players on the team, and things aren't happening. Now, I'm not saying that it's not going to get better throughout the course of the next 9 weeks, because I don't know. We'll get our first glimpse of it on Sunday versus the Giants. I guarantee you what, the rest of the season is going to be intriguing just to see how it goes, right? But this is a chance that Mark Davis, can say, all right, we're going to hit the reset button on everything. The one guy that I think is untouchable is Max Crosby, and everyone else, all bets are off as far as I'm concerned. All bets are off for everyone else on the roster outside of Max Crosby. And my co-host on my radio show, Game Night on ESPN, said on Tuesday night that, if he was the organization, he would go to Max and say, hey, this is what we plan on doing. Are you cool with being here doing that? Or do you want us to move you? And give him the option, because I think Max has earned that. And I said, you know what? That's not a bad idea, right? It's not a bad idea, but I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, but it's just something that's been floated out there. And of course, there's going to be a lot of rumors. There's going to be a lot of reports between now, the end of the season, going into the off season, right? Is it going to be lose as many games as you can, get the number one pick overall, trade off a couple of your assets, get some more draft capital? I mean, who knows, right? This is just day one, less than 24 hours. So we can't exactly say exactly how it's going to shake out, how it's going to play out. Just know that something's going to happen. And, well, it's a new day. It's a new era as far as Raiders football is concerned. So that's all I really got for segment number 2 of what's next, because that's what we know is next, right? There's a good chance Aiden O'Connell is going to get to start on Sunday, as I think that most of us want to see him at this point, and I would have no problem if he rides out the rest of the season. We know that Antonio Pierce is going to be the interim head coach the rest of the way, and we know that Champ Kelly is going to be the interim GM the rest of the way. That's what we know. Nothing else is guaranteed. As we start to find out information, we were supposed to meet with Josh McDaniels this morning at 11 o'clock. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So at some point, we'll get an immediate advisory of the next time we're allowed to be at the Intermountain Health Performance Center and get to talk to Antonio Pierce and Champ Kelly and maybe get some direction of what the team is doing moving forward. But what's on your mind? Your calls and texts are coming up next in segment number 3, 707-654-4693. Please believe there's a lot of that. Before I do that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, which is Gametime. If you're thinking about going to the game on Sunday versus the Giants, maybe you got some new life now that you know Coach McDaniels is not going to be there and there's going to be an interim head coach there, and you want to get tickets. But, well, they're last-minute tickets. What do you want to do? You got to go to Gametime. You shouldn't be frustrated. You shouldn't have to worry. You shouldn't have to sweat about getting tickets to a big event. Gametime is going to help you take the guesswork out of buying tickets. It's going to get you the best prices. It's going to get you views from your seats. And again, the best price guaranteed. They have last-minute tickets. They have flash deals, zone deals, easy find any tickets for any event, not just a Raider game, but any event in your area or maybe even my area if you're coming to Las Vegas. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy it so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices that show total up front so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Right now, what you need to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with No Hating Raider. He's calling to talk about the firing of Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. Here he is, No Hating Raider.
Q, what up? This is No Hating Raider out here in Vegas. I know you heard the news. Your boys are fired. Been relieved of their duties. You know something? Both of those dudes were in over their heads. You can tell from the get-go, Ziegler had no clue what he was doing. He literally got schooled today at the trade deadline. He let Leonard Williams go for, a third? Montez Sweat and Chase Young go for, a second and a third? Knowing we need pass rush on the other side of Max, ridiculous. And I'm glad that Mark finally stepped up and made the decision to be the Grim Reaper and get rid of those dudes. But here's the problem. Mark is the same person that hired him. So you think Mark is going to be smart enough to turn around and make an educated decision now and put somebody in there who deserves the job. It remains to be seen, so we'll see how it goes. But you know something, Raider Nation, it's a breath of fresh air, and I am tired of recycling coaches, and I would not be surprised if Gruden settles this lawsuit and be back sitting there next year. Because Mark even said it himself, he's not a football mind. He relies on other people to make those decisions, and he needs somebody that has that alpha mentality running the show for the Raiders, because it's definitely not him. But we'll see how it goes. No Hating Raider, Las Vegas. Let's go.
Thank you for the call, my man. No Hating Raider. It clearly was time as far as Mark Davis was concerned, right? It was something that we've talked about. I said, matter of fact, on Tuesday that, we could go to sleep and wake up and all of a sudden, Mark Davis could have pulled the trigger. Now, I didn't think that was going to happen. I'll be the first to tell you that. I thought they were going to at least get into the offseason. Thought that Josh McDaniels was going to get a year 3 unless there was some more embarrassing losses. Well, clearly, the loss to the Lions, the loss to the Bears was embarrassing enough. Right. And other games that you've seen so far this season where the Raiders took L's in games that they probably shouldn't have taken L's. Right. I mean, they shouldn't have lost the game to the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football, as far as I'm concerned. Right. I mean, they win against the Packers. They win against the Patriots, but they go to Chicago in a very winnable game and they take a L. That was bad. And then they go to Detroit and they let a running back, no disrespect to Jahmyr Gibbs, let a running back get more yards from scrimmage than they did. So it just didn't look like it was getting better. Mark Davis said he's seen enough. I'm sure he's heard enough from the fan base. He's heard enough from the radio station. I mean, he's heard it all. He's seen it all. There's videos out there of the evidence. So it's not like I'm making this stuff up. So he decided that it was time, right? Again, I'll never celebrate a guy getting fired because jobs are too hard to come by, right? Especially jobs in professional, high stress professions like the NFL. So I'll never celebrate that, but I understand why Raider Nation's happy and fired up. And I'm sure there's guys in that locker room that are happy and fired up that it's going to be a new day and time. And maybe they'll feel like they have a sense of relief and then go out there and play with a free and clear mind, which is obviously the most important thing. And I'm sure that's something that Mark Davis took into account when he made the decision. Up next, got a text from Raven in SoCal. Said, "Morning, Q. It's the Raven from SoCal. I will assume that Mark Davis was not only getting the word from the fans that McDaniels had to go, but I'm willing to bet Davis also was hearing it from former Raiders like Lincoln Kennedy, Charles Woodson, Tim Brown, that McDaniels had to go. The team was not ready to compete on game days, and everyone could see it. Ziegler was also showing that he was in over his head as GM for the extensions given with nothing to show for him other than Max Crosby, to draft picks that are not contributing to what may have been the straw that broke the camel's back when none of the top players available at the trade deadline were acquired. He needed to be shown the door as well. Here's to a fresh start, and as I heard you mention, perhaps Davis will bring in a head of football operations that will take the task of finding a young offensive-minded head coach who will update the Raiders' offensive scheme to create excitement like the Dolphins, Lions, Chiefs, Chargers, and Bills do. Raider Nation Boardroom, the Raven." Again, that's the Raven in SoCal. And, yeah, I mean, the coach is one thing. The GM not making a move at the trade deadline, I was okay with that, only because, Chase Young was a decent pick that the 49ers ended up making. I thought that was a really good move, but they gave up a third-round compensatory pick, so basically they got him for free. Montez Sweat is a good pickup for the Bears, but they gave up a second-round pick in 2024. And honestly, if you're going to give up, some high draft capital, why not? Why not just hold on to it and try to get that quality player in the draft so they're your player and you don't have to worry about trading? It's a tough call. It's probably good that they didn't make the trade, honestly, especially since since they're going to fire him. Maybe they wouldn't have made a good trade. Maybe they would have gave up too much draft capital. So, again, I think it worked out okay that they didn't make any move. Now, whoever is going to make the decisions, whether that's Champ Kelly or someone else, they've got, figure out a game plan the rest of the way. I think Champ Kelly is going to do everything in his power to actually get that job. And I think that he has a really good chance because he's a sharp mind. He's a guy that's really, really well respected across the NFL. But I guarantee there'll be a ton of conversations before any of that stuff is made official, which none of it could be made official until after the season. So thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Cisco. He's calling to talk about the firing of McDaniels and the importance of getting it right for the next hire. Here he is, Raider Cisco.
Yo, what up, Q? It's Raider Cisco. Just calling about the news, man. Just craziness. What a crazy Halloween for them. So this is a big deal, and for Mark Davis, for the Raiders, and he can't miss this next coaching hire. So this will set us back. This so bad. He cannot miss. We still owe McDaniels 4 years of his contract. So if they pick the wrong guy, there's no out in there. We're going to have to be stuck with him because there's no way he can fire another coach 2 years from now and owe 2 coaches money and try to get another one. So this is huge for Mr. Davis, because if he fails on this one, he might start getting pressure on. He needs to sell the team. So this is huge for the Raider organization, for the legacy of Mark Davis. They have to hit on this next coaching hire. There's no maybe. They have to hit, and they have to get the right guy in there, and hopefully they do. Let me know what you think, man. Crazy news. Just win, baby.
Thank you for the call, and yeah, it's very important. Obviously, we're going to do deep diving sooner rather than later here on the show, on the radio, whatever the case may be, on who could be the right person. But, yeah, Mark Davis has got to get it right. So he's got to take his time. And so that's the good thing that I think about it being November 1st. He's got 9 weeks left in the regular season. He's got the playoffs. He's got the offseason to get it right, to narrow in on the person that he wants that could take this team to the future. That's what it's all about. It can't be stuck in the mud. It can't be, behind the times. It's got to be young. It's got to be innovating. It's got to be refreshing. It's got to, have edge to it. They've got to find someone that is a winner that can make things happen. And look, that's exactly what he went out and found when he found Becky Hammon and brought her in to coach the Aces, and now they're back-to-back WNBA champions. And I know some people poo-poo on that, but that's still a big deal. Winning a championship is hard no matter what you're trying to win a championship in. So he found that hire. He was willing to spend the most money to go get her. Obviously, he's still got to spend a lot of money on Coach McDaniels, who's got over 4 years left on his deal. But he's shown that he's willing to do that. He wants to win. That's the one thing I've been saying on the show for the longest time. People have been poo-pooing on him, that he's a terrible owner, sell this, that, and the other. look, the one thing he has admitted is he's not a football guy, but he wants to win. He wants to get the right people in place to take this organization to where it needs to be. And I can respect that for sure. So we'll see how it shakes out. But you're absolutely right. The next hire has got to be a great hire. And he thought he had a great hire in Coach McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. Clearly, that was not the case. Up next, got a text from Nick in Iowa. It says, Q, it's Nick in Iowa. I was about 2 seconds from falling asleep when I got the alert on my phone. McDaniels and company, none other than the Zig man himself, were fired. This was best news us Raider fans had in quite some time, although I wish I would have woke up to the notification because now I can't sleep. Very relieved Raider Nation as a whole was heard. It does think, though, that hardly 2 years ago, we were a 10-win playoff team with an interim head coach that should have been named head coach, and now we're in the same boat. Oh, well, I just couldn't be happier that the Patriot way is over. Go Raiders. That's Nick in Iowa, and I'm glad that conversation could be over now. Right? I really am. I'm so glad that I don't have to hear about that anymore because that was something that, Raider Nation was hanging their hat on. And, they brought the Patriot way, and as many people on this show said, and many people on the radio said that the Patriot way doesn't work anywhere in New England, and it's not even working in New England right now. Where Josh McDaniels has proven to be really good is as a coordinator in New England under Bill Belichick with Tom Brady. Those are the facts. He hasn't been successful in Denver, clearly wasn't successful in Vegas, so now, he probably goes back to New England and probably Bill Belichick coaches for another 10 years for all I know because he has this guy underneath him and maybe he turns Mac Jones into something, but that's nothing that Raider Nation has to worry about. That's nothing that, anybody, Mark Davis has to worry about. Now it's on to finding who's next, who can take this team to where it needs to be. So thank you so much for that text. We'll close out with one more call. 209 Cocaine Raider. He's calling to talk about McDaniels and Ziegler being gone. Also hoping and looking for some hope as he sees the Raiders going into another reset. Here he is, 209 Cocaine Raider.
What's up, Q? This is your boy, 209 Cocaine Raider, coming to you from the Valley of the Sun. Kind of hear my voice. I'm one of the first to call about, once again, we're restarting. Ziegler is gone. Got Pierce as our intern, which a year ago or 2 years ago, one of the two was the linebacker coach at ASU out here. I don't know what to take you. I mean, I guess what we see on the field is what we get. And then, if you don't perform well on the radio, you don't perform well on your podcast over and over, eventually you're going to get the hook. And obviously on a bigger scale, this is different. But, I mean, I know you're nonpartisan. I know you like to stay, where you are in terms of your opinions on being critical with the management and everything, but I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. I've been trying to be kind of on your side, on your wavelength as much as possible, but I mean, seeing Devontae throw his helmet like that, granted he had his drops or whatever, but I don't know, Q. I'm hoping for something that you can tell me that can make me have a little hope, maybe a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because it's going to be a cool minute. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Sorry for the long call, but, yeah, just got the news not too long ago, and I just wanted to chime in. Hey, no matter what, just win, baby. Commitment to excellence. 209 Cocaine Raider, out.
Thank you for the call, my man, and look, I can't gas you up. I'm not going to, blow smoke up your backside and tell you all the positivity that's going to come from this because I don't know what's going on, right? I mean, we're less than 24 hours from the firing. I was literally on the radio when it happened. I didn't get any heads up. I didn't know that this was happening. I literally was on the radio coming out of commercial, top of the hour, and just happened to see a tweet from the Raiders and was like, man, it's kind of late for them to be tweeting what's going on, and then saw it. Then I saw Adam Schefter, and then all of a sudden everything rolled from there. We talked about the Raiders on ESPN radio for an hour. You can go back and listen to the podcast version of it. From 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific time was all Raiders on ESPN national radio. That's just what it was. And so, I can't tell you what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of change. I can tell you that. There's probably going to be a lot of the players that are on the roster won't be on the roster next year just because, they're going to go in a different direction. Right now I could tell you Antonio Pierce is the interim head coach, and I can tell you Champ Kelly is the interim GM. But I can't tell you anything else. Like I said, I'm not going to make up something and be like, man, this is what's going to happen, or I'm not going to do that, right? That's not me. So this is all going to play out in my eyes and your eyes at the same time. right? We're going to go through this journey together. I'm not going to gas you up. I never would do that. And you don't want me to do that, right? And so that's not this show. So yeah, definitely thank you for the call. I'm happy that you're happy. And I'm, I'm excited to see what's going to happen, but it's also a little bit, I don't want to say nerve-wracking, but it's so far from now that there's just going to be a lot of anticipation. There's going to be a lot of rumors. There's going to be a lot of reports. There's going to be a lot of this, that, and the other. You just got to be kind of careful with that because there's so much time in between now and when things can really start happening and start playing out and people can start really actually getting officially hired. So that's just something I would say to caution. But that's about it. Obviously, Raider Nation, we got a lot to get to throughout the course of the week. Oh, by the way, Patricia Traynor is going to join the show tomorrow to talk about the Giants because there's still games to be played. So we got the crossover edition, but I mean, it never is a dull day. My man Eddie in LA always says, being a Raider fan ain't the easiest, but he's going to do it. And so it's always a new storyline. It's always something. And fitting that if there's going to be a firing happen with the Raiders, it would happen on Halloween night. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, we'll have some more information. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.